guys just trying to mug me.
Well, the way I got involved in Maniac Cop was quite simple. There was a Los Angeles Film Festival, and I happened to meet Bill Lustig, and we went for a cup of coffee. He said he was looking for something to do for his next picture. And I said, you did Maniac, right? And he said, yes. And I said, well, let's see. How about combination of a horror film and a police thriller? How about Maniac Cop? And he said, wow, that's a great title. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not finished. You have the right to remain silent forever. That's the ad campaign. Well, in 30 seconds, we'd come up with the idea and the ad campaign. So then he went off. I said, well, I'll never hear from him again. That was a nice cup of coffee. And then a couple of weeks later, he called up and said, I got the money to make the picture. So I said, oh my gosh, that's great. How easy that was. Usually you have to run around and pitch things all over town. He was marvelous at going out and raising dough. So I had to write the script, and it took me about 10 days, and I wrote it, and he went out and filmed the picture. So, and you know, I helped him a little bit with the editing when it was finished, but it was really Bill's picture, and it had enough success that it involved making a second picture, which was a very good one, the second film. And then eventually the third film, which wasn't so hot, I don't think, but you know, in that one we had producers who thought they could take over the picture and do it their way, and they made pretty much a mess of it. But anyway, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was when I saw it more recently. But the first two were quite good pictures, I thought.
Jesus, Maniac Cop? How's that for a tag?
I knew I could count on you to sensationalize it the best way.
Well, I grew up in New York, and so I was very familiar with the city. I went to college at City College, which is in the middle of Harlem, so I was familiar with Harlem. And I just thought New York was the greatest backlot in the world. I mean, there's such a mixture of old and new. It's the most European city in America. There are crumbling old buildings, and then there are great new skyscrapers. And there was the wonderful Chrysler building, which is such a beautiful building, feathered, looked like, you know, bird-like in its way. Perfect place for a monster bird to nest up in the top. I think it's a prettier building than the Empire State Building. So anyway, but I love the city, and I love the fact that we could go out and shoot in guerrilla style in the city and get away with it. And usually you can't do that. I mean, in Los Angeles, if the police stop you, they will close you down. In New York, if the police stop you, you explain what you're doing, and they enjoy the involvement, and they go home and tell their wife and kids, hey, I met some movie people today, and they were shooting a picture on 57th Street, and I helped them and all that stuff. And the New York cops are agreeable fellows, but the Los Angeles cops are SOBs. They don't want to hear your story. They don't want to hear any anecdotes. You can't talk them into anything. So New York is always a better place to shoot. I think New York is the best for Maniac Cop. It's just that the congestion of the city. The city's enclosed. People walk on the street. The streets are full of humanity. You know, something like God Told Me To really works great in New York City. I mean, you could have all those great people being shot down on the streets of the city, the great St. Patrick's Day parade, which you could only do in New York, 5,000 cops. How about that, 5,000 free extras in uniform? What it would cost to stage that, my God, just the uniforms alone would cost a fortune. This way we had them all there. Of course, they didn't know they were going to be in a movie, but we shot it and we got away with it, so. Well, the genre of slasher films of that period were mainly killing teenagers, wantonly killing teenagers, you know. They just walk into a dark room and somebody would nail them to the wall with some kind of a machine or a drill or something. We didn't do that in Maniac Cop. In Maniac Cop, most of the killings were satirical in a way. I mean, that's all has a comedic undertone to it. It's not just killing people for killing's sake. I don't like those kind of pictures anyway. I don't go to see those kind of films. They don't interest me. I like a picture that has some kind of point of view, a gag. Well, you got to understand there's a whole population of America that thinks of the police in a very negative manner because they've been treated very badly by the cops over generations. You know, black people in particular in the inner cities are fearful of the police. And many times their rights have been violated, they've been pushed around, they've been killed. Even in today, I mean, there always seems to be a case in New York where the police shoot somebody down. It turns out they didn't have a gun, it was their wallet they were holding in their hand or something like that. And very, very often people get millions and millions of dollars in compensation from the city for being brutalized by the police. So this is nothing new. People are equally afraid of the police as they are welcome to see a cop. In fact, most people, if they're driving their car and they see a policeman, they get scared right away. So the police are not always your friend, they're perceived as your enemy. So it wasn't that far afield to do a psychopathic cop. But there are quite a few psychopathic cops. I had some in Black Caesar and in some of my other movies. So a psychopathic cop is nothing quite new. But you know, this was all in keeping with the cycle of films that I wrote and sometimes directed, starting with It's Alive, which had a baby as a monster. Usually you think of a baby as something benevolent, sweet, lovable, comforting. And then I had a movie where ice cream was the villain, the stuff, you know. What could be more wonderful and sweet and lovely than ice cream? And, you know, so we made these pictures. Then I had a movie called The Ambulance. Well, usually you think of an ambulance as a vehicle of mercy. In this one, it was a vehicle of murder. So on all these films, we took something that usually is perceived as being sweet and wonderful, helpful, good, generous, and now we did the police, the same thing, and made them into the monster, into the villain. So it's just a cycle of films that I've done over the years.
Let him go, Cordell!
I thought they should have employed a stuntman who could be very physically agile and could move very easily. And Robert Zadar is kind of a Hulk and kind of moves, you know. And since he was made up so heavily that you couldn't really tell who it was anyway, I had suggested that they get a stuntman for the part. But Bill made up his mind. He got him for the first picture. I said, for the second picture, maybe we'd be better off with a stuntman. And for the third picture, I said the same thing. Nobody paid any attention to me either time, so they did what they did. And nothing wrong with Robert, except that I think I could have got more out of it if they had somebody who was physically, could move more agility, with more agility. I introduced her to them and they liked her and they'd seen some of her other pictures. She'd done quite a few other pictures in which she starred and had a following in Europe from Hundra and Yellow Hair and All the Marbles as well, which was a big MGM picture. So I thought they were fortunate to get her for the film. I thought the other casting suggestions were good. Bruce Campbell was, you know, quite a good actor and quite a good personality. And I think that was a very good casting job. The cops were all well cast. The second picture was well cast. Robert Davi was good in his part. So I thought one of the strong points of the picture was the casting. Casting was good. I mean, I certainly enjoyed the partnership with Bill Lustig. We also did Uncle Sam, which was again, taking an image that usually has a benevolence to it. You know, Uncle Sam is the symbol of American patriotism, and we made him into a monster. But it was also a commentary on Vietnam and a commentary on Iraq and Afghanistan and everything else. That picture probably gets better as time goes on because of the state of the political state of the United States. And now we're in 3 wars as we speak today. So, you know, it seems that no matter what happens, we end up in a war someplace. Shooting people, dropping bombs, sending people into combat zones. I can't understand why we never seem to learn our lesson. One generation after the next, there always seems to be a war. And Uncle Sam's to blame for it. So, you know, we did our little number on him.
Oh, no one's gonna get me.
The theatrical release was not as sensational as I hoped it would be. I'd been spoiled with It's Alive, and having, you know, be the #1 picture in the variety charts, the #1 picture at the box office. I thought you could do that every time. And when my first couple of pictures came out, and one after the other, they were all huge hits. I thought every picture would be a huge hit at the box office, and it's not the way it is for anybody. Even the biggest directors, they hit and miss, you know. So, but strangely enough, most of my movies have had a long life on video and on television and on cable, and people play them all the time and they see them all the time. And something like Hell Up in Harlem and Black Caesar, they're always around, even though those pictures are 30 years old, 35 years old, they're still playing. Most pictures that age don't play at all anymore. They're forgotten about. But although my films were low-budget films and marginal films at the time, even though several of them broke out and got to be top box office hits, they still seem to survive longer than many of the big budget movies that the studios made. So who knows, you know. You never know what they say is A movies and B movies, but my contention is you never know what's a B movie for 25 or 30 years. Then you find out which pictures people really remember. I mean, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the first one was a B movie, played the second half of a double bill when I saw it as a kid. And today, it's a classic and been imitated many times and remade many times. And you know, when it first came out, not much attention was paid to it, but these things have a way of having a life of their own.
Lean on me, come on. We'll go out this way, come on.
Well, I think the picture was successful all over the world. So that wasn't just the American release, and also it was successful when it came out on, I guess, in those days, VHS, and sold a lot of copies. Well, obviously they wouldn't have made a remake if they didn't think there was a potential to make a profit on the film. So, you know, I'm always happy. There have been 3 of them so far, and I anticipate there'll be a further remake or of the original or a sequel again from somebody else. I thought if we made a remake, we'd go back more into the previous life of Cordell before he was slashed to death at the prison, and build up his prior character and have more depth and more dramatic scenes and things like that, and come up with some more big-scale action, similar to what I did with the St. Patrick's Day Parade, but different. But there's a lot you could do with it. There are many avenues that haven't been touched with Maniac Cop. We could do that. A perfect Larry Cohen movie is one that has lines around the block trying to get in, like It's Alive and Black Caesar and Q. These are all pictures that were #1 at the box office. And some of the pictures that I didn't direct, like a Bestseller, where you see Brian Dennehy looking over my shoulder now. or Phone Booth, which was #1 at the box office, which was directed by Joel Schumacher, based on a script that I wrote. But, you know, he did a great job with that. And John Flynn did a very nice job with Bestseller, with James Woods and Brian Dennehy. So I'm happy with quite a few of the pictures that I didn't direct, but that I wrote.
You don't smile very much.
When I direct pictures, I do improvise a lot on the set, make up jokes, make up funny things to say, you know. But like I did with Michael Moriarty on all the 4 or 5 pictures that we did together, what you see in the pictures is 50% of it is stuff I made up while I'm working with him on the set, because he had an ability to integrate ad libs into the dialogue. I would just yell out something to him while we were shooting, and they'd cut my voice out of the track, and he'd say what I said and improvise on it. And we'd be in the film, and it would just be, you know, unnoticeable to the audience. They would have thought this was all scripted material, but it was back and forth stuff, ad-libbing on the set. But mainly the texture of the whole picture and the structure of the whole picture is in the script. So you write it that way, and then that's the way it's shot. So, and you know, I like to do that, and I like the fact that sometimes people will say to me, hey, we turned on TV last night, and there was a movie on. It was halfway over, but after we watched it for about 10 minutes, we said, hey, this is a Larry Cohen movie. And they hadn't even seen the credits. So I said, that's great when someone can recognize your work just by watching the film. And that's, to me, that's the ultimate compliment.
Why don't you put a real feather in my cap and lay it all out for me? The reason behind those killings was extortion money, wasn't it?
Money had nothing to do with those killings. It was an act of vengeance against the city.